They had chosen the campsite for its quiet. Not the curated quiet of a maintained campground, where gravel paths crunched underfoot and distant voices carried through the trees, but a deeper kind, something older. The kind that settled into your ears until even your own breathing felt intrusive. It lay at the end of a narrow dirt road that hadn't seen fresh tire tracks in weeks, bordered by pines that leaned inward as if conspiring over it. Evan had found it on an outdated topographic map, folded soft at the creases. No official listing. No reviews. Just a clearing marked by a small, hand-drawn circle and a notation in faded ink, "Fire Pit." He liked that. Maya had hesitated when he suggested it. She didn't say no. She rarely did, but she'd asked how far it was from the nearest ranger station, how reliable the trail would be, whether there'd be other campers nearby. Probably no one, Evan had said, smiling as if that were the best part. Now, hours later, as dusk drained from the sky and the forest settled into itself, Maya sat on a low folding chair, watching the fire. It burned steadily in the pit, a ring of darkened stones blackened by past use, sunk slightly into the earth. The wood popped and shifted, embers pulsing orange and red beneath the occasional lick of flame. It was the only real source of light. Their headlamps lay turned off on the picnic table. The moon hadn't risen yet. Beyond the firelight, the forest was a wall of suggestion, vertical trunks, layered shadows, and a density that absorbed detail. The air smelled of resin and damp soil. Somewhere far off, something moved once through the underbrush, then stopped. Maya pulled her jacket tighter. The temperature had dropped faster than she expected. "Still think this was a good idea?" she asked. Evan, crouched near the fire, adjusted a half-burnt log with a stick. "It's perfect," he said. "No noise. No people. Just us. Just us," she repeated, glancing past him into the dark. The phrase felt heavier than it should have. They ate in relative silence, dehydrated pasta rehydrated over the fire, the steam briefly visible before dissolving into the cold air. The flames lit Evan's face from below, hollowing his eyes, sharpening his cheekbones. When he smiled, it seemed a little too wide, stretched by the shifting light. "You're staring," he said. "Just thinking," Maya replied. "About?" She hesitated. "It's quiet. That's the point." "No. I mean," she searched for the right word. "Empty quiet. Not like normal forest quiet." Evan shrugged. "It's late. Animals settle down." Maya listened. There was no wind in the branches. No insects. No distant calls. Even their own movements, the rustle of fabric, the scrape of a utensil, felt strangely dampened, as if the forest absorbed the sound before it could travel. "It's like it's waiting," she said, then laughed softly, as if to dismiss it. Evan didn't laugh. He nudged another piece of wood into the fire. Sparks rose briefly, then vanished into the dark above. "Waiting for what?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "Nothing. Forget it." They finished eating and cleaned up quickly, sealing food into a bare canister and placing it well away from the tents. The routine felt grounding, familiar steps in an unfamiliar place. By the time they were done, the fire had burned lower, coals glowing deep and steady. Evan added another log, and the flames climbed again, casting longer shadows. Maya watched the way the light moved across the ground. The fire pit stones caught it unevenly, their surfaces glossy with old soot. Between them, the packed earth was cracked and dark, like something that had been repeatedly opened and sealed. "Do you think people used this a lot?" she asked. Evan glanced at the pit. "At some point, yeah. It's pretty worn. It looks." She trailed off. "Like what?" "Like it's been here longer than the rest of the campsite." Evan smiled faintly. "Rocks don't move much. That's not what I mean." She leaned forward slightly, squinting. The interior of the pit seemed deeper than it should be. The coals settled and shifted, and for a moment, she thought she saw a darker space beneath them, a hollow that didn't quite align with the shape of the stones. "Hey," she said, "does that look?" A sharp crack split the air as one of the logs fractured. Maya flinched, the thought slipping away. "Just the wood," Evan said. "Yeah." They fell quiet again. Time stretched. The fire burned. The forest remained still. At some point, Evan stood and stretched. "I'm going to grab more wood," he said. Stay here. Maya nodded. Don't go far. I won't. He took a flashlight and disappeared into the trees, the beam weaving briefly between trunks before vanishing. The darkness closed in behind him almost immediately. Maya was alone with the fire. She shifted in her chair, suddenly aware of how exposed the clearing felt. The firelight didn't reach far. Beyond its edge, the woods seemed to press closer, as if drawn in by the warmth. She listened for Evan's movements, the crunch of leaves, the snap of twigs, but heard nothing. Evan, she called softly. No response. She told herself he was just a little farther out, maybe circling for dry branches. Sound didn't carry well here. That was all. The fire popped again. A log settled, sending a small cascade of embers downward. Maya leaned forward, watching them. For a moment, everything felt normal. The familiar rhythm of flame and heat, the low hiss of burning sap. The subtle shift of color from bright orange to deep red. Then something changed. It wasn't obvious at first. Just a slight alteration in the way the flames moved. Instead of rising cleanly upward, they bent, subtly at first, then more noticeably, as if pulled sideways by a breeze. But there was no wind. Maya frowned, leaning closer. The flames stretched toward one side of the pit, elongating, thinning. The heat on her face shifted with them, no longer evenly distributed. That's weird, she murmured. The wood hadn't moved. The logs remained where Evan had placed them. But the fire behaved as if something invisible pressed against it, guiding it in a single direction. She glanced around the clearing. The trees stood still, their branches unmoving. Evan, she called again, louder this time. Still nothing. She turned back to the fire. The bending intensified. The flames leaned farther, almost horizontal at their tips, licking toward the ground beyond the pit's edge. Shadows stretched in long, distorted lines across the dirt. Maya's stomach tightened. Okay, she whispered, that's not normal. She stood slowly, stepping closer to the pit. The heat should have pushed her back, but it felt oddly uneven, intense in some spots, faint in others, like a patchwork. The coals shifted again. This time, she saw it clearly. Beneath the glowing surface, something moved. Not the random collapse of burning wood, not the settling of ash, but a deliberate displacement, something pushing upward from below. Maya froze. The coals parted slightly, a thin line of darker space appearing between them. The glow dimmed along that line, as if something blocked it from beneath. Evan, she said, her voice barely audible. The line widened. Ash fell inward, revealing a deeper layer, black, unlit, and wrong. The fire flickered erratically, its sideways pull growing stronger. Then a shape emerged. At first, it was just a suggestion, an irregular contour breaking through the coals. Then it resolved into something more defined. A hand. Not clearly a hand, not at first. It was too dark, too coated in ash to show detail. But the shape was unmistakable. Elongated, jointed, pushing upward with slow, deliberate force. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The hand pressed against the edge of the pit, fingers curling over the blackened stones. Ash cascaded off it in soft, soundless streams. It moved like something waking up. Maya took a step back, her foot catching on the leg of the chair. She stumbled, nearly falling, but couldn't take her eyes off the pit. The hand pulled, and more of the shape followed. A forearm, thin, too thin, coated in soot that clung like damp soil. Then a shoulder, emerging through the coals without disturbing them as much as it should have, as if it passed through a layer that wasn't entirely solid. The fire bent harder, stretching around the shape, outlining it in flickering light. A figure crawled out of the fire pit. It didn't rise immediately. Instead, it dragged itself over the edge, one limb at a time, movements slow and deliberate. Its body was elongated, proportions slightly off, arms too long, torso narrow. Its surface absorbed the firelight rather than reflecting it, a matte darkness broken only by faint, shifting patches where ash slid away. Maya couldn't see its face. Where its head should have been, there was only a darker oval, angled downward. No features caught the light. No eyes, no mouth. The smell changed. The sharp, clean scent of burning wood gave way to something heavier, earthy and damp, like freshly turned soil, mixed with a faint, metallic tang. Maya gagged, covering her mouth. The figure paused at the edge of the pit, one hand still resting on the stone. For a moment, it was perfectly still. Then its head tilted. Not toward the forest. Toward her. Maya's entire body went rigid. She felt the weight of that attention-like pressure against her skin. Evan, she tried again, but her voice failed, reduced to a hoarse whisper. The figure shifted. It didn't stand, not fully. It remained low to the ground, limbs bent at unnatural angles. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, it turned away from her. And moved. It didn't run. It didn't walk. It crawled. Fast. Too fast. In a series of rapid, jointed motions, it crossed the edge of the clearing and slipped into the trees. The darkness swallowed it instantly, leaving only the faint disturbance of leaves in its wake. Then even that was gone. Silence returned. The fire snapped upright again, its flames rising normally as if nothing had happened. Maya stood frozen, staring at the place where the figure had vanished. Her mind struggled to process what she'd seen. It tried to reframe it, an animal, a trick of light, something explainable. But nothing fit. The fire pit sat before her, unchanged. The coals glowed. The logs burned. There was no sign that anything had emerged from it. Except, Maya stepped closer, her movements slow and unsteady. The ash inside the pit had shifted. Not dramatically, but enough to reveal a shallow depression where the figure had pushed through. The pattern of coals was disrupted in a way that didn't match the natural collapse of burning wood. She crouched, peering into it. The deeper layer beneath the coals was still visible, a darker void that seemed to absorb the light. It didn't look like ordinary earth. It looked hollow. Evan, she said again, louder now, panic creeping into her voice. Evan. No answer. The forest remained silent. Maya straightened abruptly, her gaze darting to the tree line. Every shadow seemed deeper now, more defined. The spaces between trunks felt like openings, places something could watch from. She grabbed her headlamp from the table, fumbling with the strap before switching it on. The beam cut a narrow path through the darkness, illuminating bark and leaves in stark detail. Evan, she called, turning in a slow circle. Nothing. Her heart pounded. He should have been back by now. He shouldn't have gone far. He would have heard her. Unless. The thought formed without permission. Unless something else had. Maya shook her head violently, trying to push it away. No, she whispered. No, that's a sound. Soft. Behind her. She spun, the headlamp beam jerking across the clearing. For a moment, she saw nothing. Then the light passed over the fire pit. And stopped. The ash had shifted again. The depression was deeper now. The dark space beneath it wider, more defined. It no longer looked like a shallow hollow. It looked like an opening. Maya stared, her breath coming in shallow bursts. That's not possible, she said. The fire burned on, oblivious. Another sound. This time from the forest. A faint rustle, followed by something heavier, like weight shifting against the ground. Maya swung the beam toward it, catching only the lower trunks in a tangle of underbrush. Evan, she called, desperate now. Silence. Then, a movement. Not in the beam, but just beyond it. A shape passing between trees, too fast to resolve. Maya took a step back, her heel hitting the fire pit's edge. She stumbled, nearly falling into it, catching herself at the last second. Her hand brushed the stones. They were cold. Not warm from the fire, cold, as if they hadn't held heat at all. Maya jerked her hand away, staring at the pit in disbelief. The flames still burned, but the stones, they felt wrong. Another rustle, closer this time. Maya's head snapped up. From the darkness, just beyond the reach of her light, something shifted again. She raised the beam higher, pushing it deeper into the trees. For a brief moment, it caught on something. A shape, low to the ground, still, watching. Maya's breath hitched. Evan, she whispered. The shape didn't move. Then, slowly, it began to crawl forward. Not toward the fire. Toward her. Its movement was the same as before, jointed, fluid, too smooth to be natural. The beam flickered over it, revealing glimpses of that same matte darkness, ash clinging to its surface. Maya backed away, step by step, until she felt the open space behind her, the drop-off beyond the clearing where the ground sloped downward. "Stay back," she said, her voice trembling. The figure didn't stop. It reached the edge of the firelight, its form partially illuminated. And behind it, another shape moved. Then another. Maya's stomach dropped. From between the trees, more of them emerged. Not dozens, but enough. Enough to fill the spaces between the trunks, to occupy the gaps in the darkness. Each one low to the ground. Each one moving in that same deliberate, crawling motion. Maya's mind reeled. "No," she said, louder now. "No, no, no." The first figure reached the fire pit. It paused, placing one hand on the stone, exactly as the first one had done. Then it turned its head toward the pit, and began to lower itself inside. Maya watched in horror as it slipped back into the coals, its body sinking through the burning wood without resistance. The flames bent again, stretching toward it, then snapping back as it disappeared. The ash shifted. The opening widened. Behind it, another figure approached. And another. One by one, they moved toward the fire pit, as if drawn by it. Or returning to it. Maya understood then, with a cold clarity that cut through her panic. They weren't coming out. They were going back in. Her gaze snapped to the forest again. The shapes kept emerging, filling the darkness, converging on the clearing. How many were there? How many had already passed through? Her mind flashed to Evan, out there somewhere in the trees. Alone. Or not alone. "Evan!" she screamed. The forest did not answer. The fire pit pulsed with a deeper glow now, the coals shifting constantly. As more shapes slipped beneath them, the opening beneath seemed to stretch, expanding beyond the physical limits of the stones. Maya took another step back. Her foot found empty air. She slipped, falling hard onto the slope behind the clearing. Dirt and loose stones gave way beneath her as she slid downward, scrambling to catch herself. The headlamp beam spun wildly, flashing over roots and rocks. She hit a tree trunk and stopped, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. For a moment, she lay there, gasping. Then she looked up. From her lower vantage point, the clearing was partially obscured, but the fire pit was still visible. And the figures. They continued their slow procession, crawling into the fire, vanishing beneath it. The flames burned higher now, brighter, as if fed by something more than wood. Maya pushed herself up, her body shaking. She couldn't go back up there. She couldn't stay here. She turned, scanning the slope below. The forest stretched on, dark and dense. No path, no light, no sign of Evan. Behind her, the fire crackled. And beneath it, something shifted. Not upward this time, but outward. The edge of the pit seemed to bulge, the earth around it subtly rising and falling, as if something beneath the ground pressed against it from below. Maya stared, frozen. The realization came slowly, settling over her like cold water. The fire pit wasn't just a place where things came out. It was a place where they gathered. Where they waited. And now, it was full. The ground near the pit split with a soft, tearing sound. A thin line at first. Then wider. From it, a hand emerged. Not crawling up this time, but pushing outward, toward the surface. Maya's vision blurred. There were too many to count. And they weren't staying in the pit anymore. They were spreading. The forest, so silent before, seemed to hold its breath. Maya turned and ran, crashing downhill into the dark, her light bouncing wildly ahead of her. Behind her, the fire burned. And from the clearing, from the pit, from the ground itself. The crawling sound followed. The lantern didn't start pulsing right away. At first, it behaved exactly as it should, casting a steady, amber glow that pushed back the dark just enough to make the narrow trail visible. Its glass housing was warm to the touch, the flame inside quiet and controlled, barely flickering despite the occasional brush of wind between the trees. Jonah carried it in his right hand, the metal handle hooked loosely between two fingers. The weight was familiar. Grounding. He'd used lanterns like this before, On fishing trips, in cabins where the power failed, once during a long blackout that turned the entire town into a patchwork of moving lights. But this forest felt different. It wasn't just the depth of it, though that was part of it. The trees here grew close together, their trunks tall and narrow, bark darkened by moisture. Their branches interlocked overhead, forming a canopy that swallowed what little moonlight filtered down. The path, if it could still be called that, had narrowed to a faint depression in the earth, barely distinguishable from the surrounding undergrowth. Behind him, somewhere farther up the trail, Mara followed. He could hear her boots occasionally, the soft crunch of leaves, the quiet brush of fabric against branches. But the sound came inconsistently, as if distance distorted it. You still see the markers? She asked. Her voice felt closer than her footsteps. Jonah lifted the lantern slightly, angling the light ahead. A strip of faded orange tape fluttered from a low branch, barely visible against the bark. Yeah, he said. Still there. Good. A pause. Then, quieter. It feels like we've been walking longer than we should have. Jonah didn't answer right away. He'd been thinking the same thing. They'd entered the forest just before dusk, following a marked trail that, according to the map, should have looped back toward a clearing within an hour. 2 at most, even at a slow pace. But the forest had thickened. The markers had grown farther apart. And the light had drained from the sky faster than expected, as if something above the canopy absorbed it rather than let it pass. Maybe we missed a turn, he said finally. There weren't any turns, Mara replied. He glanced back. Her silhouette was partially visible in the lantern light, shoulders tense, face pale where the glow caught it. Her eyes reflected the flame in small, steady points. Then we keep going, Jonah said. Trail has to lead somewhere. Yeah, but she didn't sound convinced. They walked on. The forest pressed in around them. The air felt thicker here, damp and cool, carrying the scent of moss and something older, something buried. The ground softened underfoot, absorbing their steps until even their own movement seemed distant. Jonah adjusted his grip on the lantern. That was when he noticed it. A flicker. Not the normal kind. The subtle, irregular movement of flame responding to air currents. This was different. More deliberate. The light dimmed slightly, then brightened again. He slowed, holding the lantern closer to his face. The flame was steady. Too steady. It didn't dance or waver. It held its shape perfectly, as if suspended in place. And yet the light itself seemed to breathe. Faintly at first. Almost imperceptible. Bright. Dim. Bright. Jonah frowned. You okay? Mara asked. Yeah, he said. Just. He hesitated. The lantern pulsed again. Brighter. Then softer. Not random. Measured. Like a heartbeat. He swallowed. This thing's acting weird. What do you mean? It's flickering. Mara stepped closer, peering at it. I don't see anything. It's subtle, Jonah said. Look at the edge of the light. She did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then her brow furrowed. Okay, she said slowly. Yeah, that's not normal. The light expanded, outward, illuminating more of the trees. Then it contracted, pulling the shadows back in. Bright. Dim. Bright. Dim. Jonah's grip tightened. Maybe it's the fuel, he said. Or pressure or something. Does pressure make it do that? Mara asked. I don't know. They stood there, watching it. The rhythm continued. Slow. Even. Unmistakably patterned. And then, something else. Mara tilted her head slightly. Do you hear that? Jonah listened. At first, he heard nothing beyond the usual, if anything here could be called usual. The distant creak of wood. The faint whisper of leaves shifting against one another. Then, beneath it, a sound. Soft. Low. Like air moving through a narrow space. Inhale. Exhale. He felt it more than heard it. A subtle change in pressure, a faint cooling against his skin followed by a slight warmth. The forest breathed. Jonah's chest tightened. Tell me you hear that too, Mara said. I hear it. The lantern pulsed. Bright. Dim. The sound followed. Inhale. Exhale. Jonah's stomach dropped. It's sinking, he said. With what? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew. The light swelled as the forest exhaled. And dimmed as it inhaled. Or maybe the other way around. It was hard to tell. because the rhythm didn't quite match their own breathing. It was slower, deeper, like something vast, taking its time. We should keep moving, Mara said, her voice tight. Yeah, Jonah forced himself to walk. The trail, or what remained of it, continued ahead, winding between trees that seemed closer now, their trunks crowding the path. The lantern's pulsing made it harder to judge distance. Shadows stretched and collapsed in time with the light, creating the illusion of movement even where there was none. Or maybe there was. Jonah caught himself glancing into the dark between pulses, trying to see what existed when the light was at its weakest. He never saw anything clearly. Just suggestions. Vertical shapes that might have been trunks. Or something standing between them. How far do you think we've gone? Mara asked. No idea. We should have hit the clearing by now. I know. The breathing grew louder. Not in volume, exactly, but in presence. It pressed against the edges of Jonah's awareness, impossible to ignore. Each inhale seemed to draw the forest inward, tightening the space around them. Each exhale released it, but not entirely. The lantern kept time. Bright, dim, bright, dim. Jonah tried to match his own breathing to it. He couldn't. It was too slow, too deliberate. He found himself holding his breath during the dim phases, waiting for the light to return. That's when he noticed something else. The trees. They weren't moving. Not in the way trees should. No wind, no sway. But their shadows. During each pulse, the shadows didn't just grow and shrink. They shifted direction, subtly, as if the source of light wasn't entirely fixed. Jonah stopped. What? Mara asked. Look at the shadows. She did. At first, she didn't react. Then her shoulders stiffened. They're wrong, she said. The lantern brightened. The shadows stretched away from them. It dimmed. The shadows contracted, but not back toward the lantern. Towards something else. Something deeper in the forest. Jonah's throat went dry. That doesn't make sense, Mara whispered. No. Another breath. Inhale. The air cooled sharply, enough that Jonah saw a faint mist when he exhaled. Exhale. Warmth returned, subtle but noticeable. The forest was regulating itself. Like lungs. Like something alive. We need to get out of here, Mara said. Yeah. They walked faster. The trail became harder to follow. The markers, those strips of orange tape, appeared less frequently now, sometimes missing entirely for long stretches. The ground dipped and rose unpredictably, roots catching at their feet. The lantern's pulse didn't change. It remained steady, unyielding. Jonah tried to focus on it as a constant, a guide, but it didn't feel like it belonged to him anymore. It felt like it was responding to something else. Or obeying it. Jonah, Mara said suddenly. What? I don't think we're alone. He didn't ask how she knew. He felt it too. A presence. Not a specific shape or sound, but a pressure, like being watched from multiple directions at once. He turned, sweeping the lantern behind them. The light pulsed, illuminating the path they'd just walked. For a brief moment, everything looked normal. Then the light dimmed, and in that dimness, Jonah thought he saw movement. Low to the ground, sliding between the trees. When the light brightened again, it was gone. Did you see that? He asked. Mara didn't answer immediately. I saw something, she said. Where? Everywhere. They kept moving. The breathing grew closer. No, more internal. It felt like it was happening inside the forest and inside them at the same time. Jonah's ears popped slightly, pressure shifting with each inhale. The lantern flared brighter than before. For a moment, it illuminated something ahead. A clearing. Small. Circular. The trees around it leaned inward, their trunks slightly curved as if drawn toward the center. Finally, Mara said, relief flooding her voice. They stepped into the clearing. The ground here was bare, the usual layer of leaves and debris stripped away to reveal dark, compacted soil. Jonah lifted the lantern higher. The pulse intensified. Bright. So bright it hurt to look at. Then dim. So dim the edges of the clearing vanished. In the center, something moved. Not a figure. Not exactly. More like a distortion. The air itself seemed thicker there, bending the light, warping the space just enough to make it difficult to focus. Mara grabbed Jonah's arm. What is that? I don't know. The breathing was loud now. overwhelming. The entire clearing expanded and contracted with it. The trees creaked softly, their trunks flexing just enough to be noticeable. The ground beneath Jonah's feet shifted, not moving, but giving slightly, as if layered over something soft. The lantern pulsed faster. No, deeper. Each cycle more pronounced. Jonah realized something then. The lantern wasn't sinking to the forest anymore. It was leading it. The inhale came a fraction after the light dimmed. The exhale followed the brightness. It's controlling it, he said. Or it's being controlled, Mara replied. The distortion in the center shifted. For a moment, it resolved into something more defined. A shape. Tall. Too tall. Then it collapsed back into itself. Jonah's grip on the lantern tightened. We need to leave, Mara said. Yeah, but neither of them moved. The clearing held them. Not physically. But something in the air made movement feel wrong. Like stepping out of sync. The lantern dimmed. The forest inhaled. Everything pulled inward. For a split second, Jonah felt it. A resistance. As if something didn't want them to leave. The lantern brightened. The forest exhaled. The pressure released. Now, Mara said. They ran. Back the way they came, or what they hoped was the way they came. The trail was harder to find now. The markers were gone entirely. The trees looked the same in every direction. The lantern continued its pulse, relentless. Jonah tried to ignore it. He couldn't. It dictated everything. The timing of his steps. The rhythm of his breath. The speed of his thoughts. Behind them, the clearing seemed to follow, not physically, but in presence. The distortion lingered at the edge of perception, just out of sight. Don't look back, Mara said. I'm not. But he wanted to. Badly. The breathing didn't fade. It stayed with them. Inside them. Around them. The forest no longer felt like a place. It felt like a body. And they were inside it. The lantern flared again. Brighter than ever. For a moment, the path ahead was perfectly clear. And in that clarity, Jonah saw something that made him stop. Footprints. In the soft earth. Leading ahead of them. Not theirs. Too deep. Too evenly spaced. Mara nearly collided with him. Why are you? She saw them too. Those weren't there before, she whispered. No. The lantern dimmed. The forest inhaled. The footprints seemed to sink deeper. The ground giving way beneath them. Then, slowly, they filled in. As if something pressed up from below. Jonah's heart slammed against his ribs. Run, he said. They ran again. Branches tore at their clothes. Roots caught at their feet. The lantern swung wildly, its pulse distorting the world into a stuttering sequence of light and shadow. Bright. Trees. Dim. Something between them. Bright. Empty path. Dim. Movement. They burst through a line of thinner trees and stumbled onto open ground. A road. Narrow. Gravel. Real. The breathing stopped. Abruptly. The lantern's pulse ceased. Its light steadied. Jonah and Mara stood there, gasping, the forest behind them looming dark and silent. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mara let out a shaky laugh. We made it. Jonah nodded, though his chest still felt tight. Yeah, he looked down at the lantern. Its flame was normal again. Steady. Unremarkable. As if nothing had happened. Let's not go back in there, Mara said. Agreed. They started down the road, away from the trees. After a few steps, Jonah glanced back. The forest stood still, silent, watching. He turned forward again. They walked in silence for a while. Then, Jonah felt it. Faint. Subtle. The lantern flickered. Once. Twice. He froze. Don't. Mara said quietly. Don't what? Don't look at it. He swallowed. But he couldn't help it. Slowly, he lowered his gaze. The light dimmed. Then brightened. Not as strong as before. Not yet. But enough. Enough to notice. Enough to feel. From the forest behind them. A distant, slow inhale. Jonah's chest tightened. The lantern pulsed again. And this time, his own breath followed it.